Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a grateful recovering addict.
Hi, Sarah.
If we could just take a moment of silence for me to collect my thoughts, and for the addict that's not with us today. Okay, like I said, I'm Sarah. I'm a grateful recovering addict. I'm a little nervous, you guys. I've never spoke at a meeting this size. I've only done H&I, so bear with me. In the Just for Today, I was reading it this morning, and then we read it before the meeting started. It talked about wanting to sound a certain way in Narcotics Anonymous and come across a certain way. And sometimes I set those expectations for myself. But I have to remember, I'm not here because I like to speak publicly. I'm here for two reasons, because this helps me in my recovery. And hopefully it's going to help someone sitting in this room, even if it's just one person. So I have to keep those things in mind when I start to think a little squirrely, or when I want to sound a certain way. I'm here for those two purposes. And as long as I tell the truth, like I know my story, and I'm here to share that with you guys. So thank you. Lauren's been hounding me to speak since I had the clean time requirement, and I've always turned her down, but she's never stopped asking me to speak. So she called me Monday, and she texted me Monday, and I knew when she texted me that she was going to ask me to speak somewhere even before I talked to her. But honestly, you know, what's awesome is I want to speak tonight. You know, I am nervous, but I want to be here. I'm grateful that I'm able to sit in this chair and share my experience, strength, and hope with you guys. I'm going to talk a little bit about what it was, my childhood. I want you guys to know that I don't think that what happened during my childhood is the reason I used drugs. For a long time, I used that as an excuse or a justification to get high. For many, many years, you know, this happened to me, or they treated me this way, and I used that. I don't think it would have been any different if my childhood was different from the way it was. I think I was born an addict, and that nothing would have changed that. I would have eventually winded up in the same place, so I just want to make that clear. You know, I'm not going to lie, I had a rough childhood. My parents, I am the product of two addicts. You know, they were in and out of jails and institutions my whole childhood. We were constantly taken away, you know, DCFS was constantly involved. Any type of abuse you can imagine took place: sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, I mean, the whole 9 yards. At a young age, my mom disappeared. You know, she is still not a part of my life. She's been out of my life since the first grade. And it was just kind of, we had a chaotic childhood. We were constantly moving, different people constantly had custody of us. There was never any sureness or stability growing up. And I talk about my childhood because that's when I started to pick up some of these like defects of character that we like work on in the 6 and 7 step. This is when I started to like learn. I really like, when I look back at it now, that's when the addict behavior started. You know, I really started to feel different because of my childhood. Like I had a secret and I didn't want to tell anybody. I didn't want anybody to find out who Sarah really was. So I constantly felt like I couldn't show people who I really was. I couldn't be myself, and I'm kind of a shy and an introvert as it is, so that wasn't easy. But the strange thing is I always fit in with people really well. You know, I could always talk to people pretty easily. I did well in school. I excelled in sports, but only when I wanted to, when it was of my choosing. No one could tell me to do anything. And a lot of my childhood, I have 7 brothers and 4 sisters. And my dad eventually got custody of us, but he had to work 80 hours a week. So from a young age, we were allowed to do whatever we wanted to do. You know, we didn't have rules. No one could do, you know, we ran the house pretty much. And you get used to that. You know, no one could tell me what to do. And I started experimenting, I want to say in middle school. You know, all my siblings used, my parents used, so it was kind of normal in my household. And like I said, I started experimenting middle school. And from the beginning, now that I look back at it, it was never experimenting. There were red flags from the first time I used. You know, I was the girl who my friends had to like drop me off in my front lawn because I was too shit-faced to, you know, people were always taking care of me. You know, my grades started to slip. In high school, I started to question my sexuality, and I talk about this because this was another reason I felt different from people. This was another thing I had to hide, you know. God forbid somebody found out about it. And I started to act out more, you know. I was promiscuous. My grades started to fall. I started to lose friends. You know, I was being kicked off teams because getting caught at parties, things like that. Like, and at this point, my father didn't know what to do with me, and it wasn't long after that that I got pregnant. So here I am, 16 years old, and I'm pregnant now. And I thought, like, okay, like, I really got to get my shit together. Like, I have a baby on the way. But like I said, at this time, I felt trapped. I'm questioning my sexuality, but I'm pregnant, and it's like I felt trapped. Like, I don't have an education. I've got nowhere to go. I have this baby inside me now, and I thought, like, when this baby's born, I'm really going to get my act together. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. And that's when I really started to realize that it wasn't just like teenage experimenting, that something might really be wrong with me, because I had this beautiful baby boy and I was unable to stay clean. I think he was born a week and I was using. I didn't breastfeed because I wanted to use drugs and be able to drink. Like, I look back on that sick thinking now, and it's like the insanity of it. And like I said, within a week of him being born, I was using. And it spiraled out of control quickly. By the time he was 9 months old, my family did an intervention on me because I was unable to care for him. And I was forced into my first treatment center at this time. I think part of me wanted something different, but I wasn't sure. I just thought I was going to live the way my parents lived. That's how my life was going to be. That's what I was destined for. But I was curious. So I went to this treatment center. I did what they told me to do. I got out, and it was suggested to me that I start going to meetings. So I started going to another fellowship. But I was young, and I had a lot of reservations. So here I am at 18 years old. Like I said, it was a different fellowship. I felt out of place. There wasn't a lot of young people around, and at this age I hadn't even been into a bar, so I'm thinking, like, how can this place be for me? I don't fit in here. And there were a lot of yets I hadn't experienced. I thought, I'm not as bad as the people in this room, like, I haven't done half the things these people have done. Like, maybe this isn't the place for me. And also, I want to touch on the fact that, like, that time period, I was in there 2 years and I managed to not use, but that's because I white knuckled it, and I wanted to prove people wrong. I got a sponsor just to say I had a sponsor. I attempted to work the steps, but the steps are useless if you're not honest. That's right. And at that point I was unwilling to be honest about certain things. And like, I put together some clean time there. I don't know how. Who knows? Doesn't really matter now. But around that time period, I came out to my family and my friends. Everybody kind of knew. And life was okay, even not working the steps, but it still felt like something was missing, like, this isn't what I want for myself for the rest of my life. But my life was coming together. I met a woman who I'm still with. I fell in love. I had my own apartment, I had my own car, and I moved out to this area from where I was living. So I moved away from the itty-bitty little recovery network I had. I wasn't calling my sponsor. I stopped going to meetings, and I manipulated my partner now. She didn't know anything about my past life, just what I chose to tell her. So it was really easy for me to withhold information. Like, I used to have a drug problem, but I'm okay now, and she doesn't come from a family like I do. She's a normie. Her family's a normie. So it was really easy for me to move away to a different city and not reestablish any recovery connections out here. And things were honestly okay for a little bit. And then I started thinking kind of squirrely, like, maybe I'm not an addict, maybe I'm not an alcoholic, maybe I was just experimenting. I was young, like, life is good now. And I used again, and I thought, I can drink socially. I never had a problem with drinking, so maybe I can drink socially. I've never been to a bar, but maybe I could go in and just have one. And I mean, we laugh, but it's like really sad, sick thinking. Like, I look back at it now, and it's like I was playing with fire is what I was doing. And it didn't take very long for me to get right back to where I was, in worse. Because now I had money, I was working and I lived on my own. I was able to get away with more. And I always set these like lines in the sand for myself. Like, once I cross that line, then I know it's really bad. And for that year, I continuously crossed those lines. Like I said, I would never take my son to pick up drugs. I did that. I said I would never sell my body to obtain drugs. I did that. I said I would never be unfaithful in a relationship, and I did that. Like all these things, I would never touch this one drug. And that was the one drug I was using 5-6 times a day. And this was kind of a turning point for me. I'd always used drugs, but I was never physically dependent on a drug. I could use and then not use for a day. I never needed it to like get up in the morning. And I was introduced to a specific drug by a family member. And the drug I said I'd never touch, and I fell in love, you guys, instantly, right from the get-go. And it took everything. And here my life is, like, things were okay 9 months ago, and now here I am, like, going to the dope spot twice a day with my son to pick up. I'm, like, selling the shit in my apartment to pick up. I can't keep a job, and I'm a hard worker. I'm a work mule, but I can't keep a job. I can't pass a drug test. Here I am, a gay woman selling my body for drugs. Like, shit was all over the place. And my wife found out what was going on. It wasn't a secret to anyone what was going on, because I'm a pretty reliable person when I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I show up for my family and my friends, but nobody could count on me. And I remember waking up one morning and just thinking, like, I didn't have anything left. I had no job. Empty apartment, no food in the fridge, the lights, our electricity was shut off, and all those tangible things you can feel, touch, and see. Yeah, that sucked, but I felt so hollow and so empty, like, what the fuck am I doing? What's the point of all of this? Just disgusted with myself. Skin and bones, just really unhealthy inside and outside. And I told my wife, like, I don't want to do this anymore. I told her the truth, like, this is what I've been doing for the past year. I'm sorry, I want help. And at that point, I think I wanted help, but I didn't know what it would take to get better. So I wanted it. So here we go again. And I say this because there's a pattern to my using, It's always the same thing over and over, the insanity over and over again. So here I am again for the second time, checking myself into a detox. And that's what I did at CDH. I spent 3 weeks in the hospital and then went to an outpatient because I didn't want to go to the inpatient because it was an inconvenience to me. And now I look back on that, that's Sara trying to control things. And that's when I first came to Narcotics Anonymous. And I actually asked Lauren to, was it you? No, it wasn't you this time around. Someone else to be my sponsor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But I came to meetings and nothing really changed besides the fact that I wasn't using drugs. I was the last girl in the meeting and the first girl out. People saw me, but no one knew my name because I would never talk to anybody. I got a sponsor, like, to look good on the surface. I wanted people to think that I was like the NA poster child, but it was a bunch of bullshit is what it was. And it didn't take long again for me to see my way out the door. And honestly, this last relapse, nothing bad happened. It was like a weekend thing. People talk about spiritual awakenings, and I remember I was like down to my last one in the bathroom because that's where I did all my using. My son's playing in his room. I can hear my family on the outside. That's how it always was. I locked myself somewhere and isolated and did my own thing, and everyone else took care of my responsibilities. That's how it was when I used. And I remember being down to one more and thinking, like, and 2 days before I said, once this is gone, I'm done. Like, but I remember seeing that last one and being panic stricken. Like, how am I going to get my wife to give me $500? Like, how can I account for that money? And I remember, like, looking in the mirror and just being like, this is how you're going to die if something doesn't change. And for me, like, it wasn't anything super profound, but it was just like a moment of clarity. Like, this is not how I'm going to go out. I'm going to try to get clean. Even if it kills me, I'm going to keep trying until I get it. Nothing's going to stop me. And that's when I want to say I really came to Narcotics Anonymous. And that's when I asked Lauren to be my sponsor, And I came, and my first year of recovery, you guys, was not super fun. I'm going to tell the truth. There was a lot of fear involved. I was scared. I still am. I was scared of everything, my own shadow. I couldn't even pick up a key tag because my anxiety was so high. People had to force me to do those things. But I was so afraid to go back to that life that I was willing to do some of the things Lauren told me to do. You know, and we jumped into the steps right away. And I wanted to say I really started, you know, working my first step that day I looked in the mirror and said no more. And for me, that's what the first step is about. It's an honest admission of like what my life has really become. When I put drugs in my body, something happens. I don't know what it is. I can't explain it. But like a vampire craves drugs, that's what happens to me when I put drugs in my body. I'm thirsty for more, and nothing's ever going to change that. There's some kind of reaction that happens. And my experience has shown me when I use drugs, things fall apart around me. Every single time. I may be good at covering it up and sweeping it under the rug, but if you look at it truthfully, like my life always turns to a wreck when I use drugs. So that was the first step for me, just like I'm an addict and I can't use anything successfully. And so I started doing what Lauren told me. You know, I did 90 meetings in 90 days. I called her every day, and this was uncomfortable stuff for me to do. But like I said, the fear of going back, you know, like I didn't want to go back to that, so I was willing, and we started working the steps, and we started doing like fun stuff in Narcotics Anonymous. I remember like the first couple weeks, everyone was going camping and no one invited me. I felt like I needed an invite, but really like you can do anything in that book, that you don't need an invitation. And I remember wanting to go because I wanted friends in Narcotics Anonymous. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be a part of. I never had friends using. I was never part of anything special. You know, I remember calling Lauren like, do you think I could possibly go camping? And she was like, fuck right, you're going camping. Like, let's do this. But you know what, that's the thing. Like, I didn't know we could like have fun without the use of drugs or alcohol. Like, and that was like cool stuff we started doing, and I really started to feel a part of. And I met like, I don't have a lot of friends in Narcotics Anonymous now, but I have a couple people who like I know are going to be there no matter what. And we came to this the second step, and that for me is like I was never raised around religion, and you hear the word God a lot, and it's in the steps, it's in the literature, you hear people refer to it in meetings. But my sponsors, I think, caught on to I think I'm really smart, but I think they caught on. I'm not as smart as I think I am. So I've been blessed with the women I've been able to work with. They've made things the steps really simple for me. Like I can't mess them up no matter what I think, you know. And the second step for me was just like, and I had been around a couple months before I hit the second step, and I'd managed to stay clean. But that wasn't my own doing. I'd never been able to do that by myself. And the second step for me is asking me, am I willing to believe that something, whether it be the room or the literature or some force, whatever, nature, could help me stay clean. That was the second step for me. And help things become less insane, help me make better choices, you know. So I'm not beating my head into the wall constantly, because that's what I felt like using, like winding up in the same place over and over again. And then we came to the third step, and it was like, for me, it's simple, a continuation with the rest of the steps. I can do that, even if I don't believe, even if I'm not sure. No one's asked me to define my higher power in this program yet, you know. I want to, because I see people who are so sure, and I get envious of that. But nowhere does it ask me like that I need to know 100%, and that's what's so awesome. And like I said, the third step is just a promise to myself that I'm going to continue with the rest of the steps. Because I'm like a repeat offender, like 1, 2, 3, relapse. 1, 2, 3, relapse. Because the fourth step's kind of a scary thing. Even though it's just asking me to write some shit on paper. But the thing is, some of the stuff it's asking me to write on paper, if I'm being honest and thorough, is stuff that I've pushed so far back. I've never thought about after it happened, because there's so much shame and guilt associated with it. And so honestly, the fourth step was harder for me than the fifth step was, because for the first time, I'm writing down 10 years worth of garbage of stuff that just I do not feel good about. And I remember thinking like, I want to leave this thing out. But then I remember thinking to myself, like, because I imagine me having to tell it to somebody in the fifth step. And I was unwilling to take the chance Like, if I leave this out, is there a chance that that could bring me back out there? And that's not something I was willing to do. So I wrote that inventory out like I wasn't going to read it to anybody, like I was going to burn it later. And it was embarrassing, and it was shameful, and there were a lot of feelings, but I also sent like a sense of freedom to get that stuff out, like stuff that I just pushed down for so long. And the fifth step, it was uncomfortable and awkward. I'm uncomfortable and awkward, so like having to say that to somebody else was a little weird, but honestly, like I did it with a woman I really trust. You know, I originally worked with Lauren, and now I'm working with Tavia, and it's pretty badass that you're both here tonight. Like, how cool is that? And I shared my fifth step with Tavia, and honestly, I don't know if it's her old age, but she doesn't remember like half the stuff I told her. Like, I'll bring it up now, and it's like, that happened, and I'm like, yeah, but like, that's the thing. I made such a big deal about it because I'm so self-centered and my ego's huge. It's not a big deal. And we did it, and it was done and over with, and I felt a sense of freedom from doing that. And then we went on to my sixth step and my seventh step, and for me, those steps are about getting rid of the things that are no good for me anymore. You know, those things I've relied on for so long to get me through and help me survive, just survive, barely make it through, that don't give me purpose anymore. You know, they don't serve me in any way positive. And those steps were also about looking at things that are good about Sara. I didn't think when I came here that there was anything worthy about myself. And we made a list of a bunch of attributes that, like, oh my gosh, like, those are the things the drugs covered up for so long. And then the 8 steps asking me to make a list of people I've harmed. And for me, honestly, that list wasn't big because there weren't a lot of people in my life. I never let people get close to me. And that's something I realized. You know, I never let people get too close. You can look, but that's it, you know, stay away. And now we're working on my 9th step, and that's honestly been a really slow process. I think we've been working for like at least 4 months now, but you know what, I'm doing it. That's right. Little by little by little. And wow, I've been like spewing. I thought like the words were going to be hard to find, but they're not. And like I said, for me, I'm doing the same things now I did when I first got here. And that's worked up until this point, and I'm going to continue to do those things until they don't. So that's attend meetings, and I don't get to as many as I should, but I still go. You know, my life is very full now. I live a happy life now, and it's full of people and love and just wonderful things. So I don't get to as many meetings, but I have women in my life that hold me accountable. You know, my best friend sitting in this room too. I've never had a best friend before. You know, I met her in Narcotics Anonymous. And when I don't go to meetings, when they know I haven't been to meetings for a week or 2 weeks, they call me like, what are you doing? We know you're busy, but you're not going to be busy if you go back out there. You're going to have nothing left. So I go to meetings, and I call my sponsor once a week, twice a week. I call her when I need her. You know, we're at a point now in our relationship where I don't need to call her every day because she knows I'm not like, not how I was when I first came in. You know, I'm not as crazy and all over the place. I still am, it's just not to that same extent. And I continue to work on steps. I've been really fortunate. My sponsors have been women that won't work with me unless I'm working the steps. Right. You know, they both told me, what's the point of being in a 12-step group if you're not going to work the 12 steps? Like, that doesn't make sense. So I've been really fortunate with that. And just getting involved, for me, that's been really slow. I'm an introvert, and I'm not social. Like, being social is not appealing to me for the most part. But you know, it's about getting out of your comfort zone and trying new things. Where else was I going with this? And it's just been, I don't have anything inspirational to say. Like, life's different for me now, you know, like, my life looks really different. Just this past week, I had a situation. My sister overdosed in my house. And it was really scary, to say the least, because my house is a clean house now, you know. We have dinner at the same time every night. There's food in the fridge, you know. We do things together as a family. It's a safe place. It's not a war zone anymore. And that was like an eye-opener to me that I am not immune to that just because I have 18 months clean. You know, I can go back to that one bad choice, and I am back to that. And honestly, that kind of sparked a fire under my ass to like get back here and get involved. And when Lauren asked me, it's like she knew to like call me and ask me, like I needed that at that moment. And I also want to touch on like sponsorship. This is, I don't know, I feel like was meant to be how I came and the women I met, and this is something that I hold near and dear. I'm not a sappy person, but whenever I talk about this, I can't help but get a little bit emotional, because I came here and like certain women like Tavia and Lauren and Taylor, like from the get-go made me feel comfortable. They made me want to come back to the meetings. Like Villa Park, I know I'm going to see Tavia and Lauren. That's at least 2 people I know, so I'm going to go. You know, they made me feel welcome. And those relationships, like these women, for me, coming here and seeing people say I have this amount of clean time and this is what's going on in my life. When I first came here, I questioned that. But I was able to form relationships with women like this. And I began to call them, and I would go to their house and we would do things, and I saw that like they were actually clean. They weren't just talking out of their ass, and that they had like pretty decent lives. And that was evidence to me that something that's going on inside these rooms is working, and it's something I'm attracted to, and it's something that I want. And so like those relationships in the beginning are honestly like the reasons I kept coming back to the rooms. And like you guys have always given, like the women I'm close to, giving me that push to like get out of my comfort zone and try new things and continue to work on myself, because there are times, even this time around, where I can stagnate on a step or stop going to meetings. Recovery is ebb and flow. I want to say that all the time it's great and I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but sometimes life gets in the way, and that's not how it always is. But I constantly have this like army of women to reinforce what I need to be doing. I don't hang out with people anymore who use drugs. I hang out with like-minded individuals. Those are the type of people I want in my life, and that's something I also want to stress on. I feel like I see a lot of young people coming in and out of the rooms, and I was one of those young people. I look back and it's like shocking, because 10 years ago I was one of those people like questioning whether I belonged here or not. And then I see people like coming in like that, and for me it would be impossible to stay clean if I was hanging out in the same places with the same people doing the same things. So for me, I have to be really careful who I associate with, because it's really easy for me to get sucked into things I don't want to be a part of. So I stick with the people who I know have a pretty solid recovery, and it's worked so far. And I don't want to talk about all the like material things I've gained. 45 minutes me speaking is not enough time to cover everything I've gained from Narcotics Anonymous. I could talk about it all day and it still wouldn't even touch it. But I feel like I'm finally like becoming who I was supposed to be. Like for the first time in a long time, like I can look at myself. Like I'm getting ready today for the meeting and I'm looking at myself and being able to be like, you look pretty today, like you're gonna go kill this. Yeah, you're nervous, but who cares? Like you go do this, you be you, and like that's a good feeling, because it's hard for me to find that, but through Narcotics Anonymous, like I get little glimpses of that now, and I like it and I want more of it, so I'm gonna continue to come here. And I just want to thank you guys. This is my home. I get nervous, but I forget, like, this is my home. Right. You guys are my people. Like, you guys have saved my life, and for that, I'll forever be grateful. And I'm going to shut up now because I think I'm rambling, but thank you guys for having me.